Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns. I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through my website YarnAddict.co.uk. You can find links to everything I'm going to talk about today below this video, and including links to my social media and to sign up to my newsletter. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing, and if you're already a subscriber, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Today I'm going to do a knit and chat video. So I've got some knitting here, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but I'll tell you about the topic of my video today. So I'm going to talk about size inclusivity, which is a hot topic at the moment in the knitting world. And I talk about this from somebody who is a plus size, and also from somebody who's also a designer. So let's just show you what I'm going to be knitting first. So I'm working on, I'm actually going to just put this stitch marker on. This is one of the ones that came in my Orchid Luxury Yarn advent calendar. I'm just going to put that on just so I can measure how much I actually get knitted in this video. I am knitting a headband. So the reason for knitting this is because I want to be able to wear it. I'm going to Norway soon, and I don't always like wearing hats unless it's very, very cold, when my ears and my forehead gets cold. So I thought a headband would be a good idea. I also want a fairly easy pattern for people to practice basic brioche rib and brioche, especially syncopated brioche, for my workshops and for a new online course that I'm planning. Don't know if I'll release the pattern, whether it'll just for people to do my brioche basics workshop and take my online brioche course, which will hopefully be out sometime in February. But it's just going to be a very basic headband. Hang on, let me do it that way. Yeah, it doesn't look very good like that. Hopefully it'll look better when I finished it. It's got a little bit of a twist at the front. I caught a bit of yarn in the zip. I'm using this project bag, which isn't actually a project bag. It's a Spanish make called Bimba y Lola, and I think it's like a toiletry bag actually, but I just loved it. It was in the sale when I was in Spain last summer. Was it last year? Was it 2021? Might have been when I went in March last year. I can't remember. Anyway, it was in the sale, so I got it, and I used it as a project bag rather than a toiletry bag, because I think it's a bit expensive for toiletry bag. And I love the colours, so that's why I used it. And I have occasionally used it as a handbag as well. Anyway, I thought it matched the yarn, so I put it in there. So the yarns I'm using are, let me just get those out. Right, this yarn is, let me just grab the labels. So this yarn is Spectrum Fibre. It is DK 100% Superwash Merino, and it's called Flamingos on Parade, and I actually have that in a 4-ply version as well, which I think you can see. I think it's that one. Hang on. No, there. There, can you see it? Anyway, I think that's the one. And then this yarn is Orchid Luxury Yarn, and it is Ultra Merino DK, and the color, which is 100% Superwash Merino, and the colorway is Wannabe. Now this one has like 10 meters less or 5 meters less than this yarn, so it's not exactly the same thickness, but as I'm knitting with it, it feels like the same thickness, but it is slightly, I think that one was 115 gram skein, and that's 100 gram skeins, and there's like 10 meters difference, so I guess that's a little bit thicker, but it doesn't feel like it. Anyway, I'm doing this syncopated brioche pattern. I haven't worked on it for a few days. I cast on last week with the idea that I would just knit on it to get it started, and then I would put it down, and then I kept picking it up. So I kind of knitted further than I thought I would. Okay, so I'm knitting continental style. I will film a little bit of a video you actually down at my hands as well after I finish this, and add that to the video so you can see actually how I knit. Going to Norway, and I think I did I say it at the beginning? I started this video twice, so now I have no idea what I said in this one and what I said in the first one. So I'm going to Norway, and it's going to be, hopefully it's going to be cold. it could be, I mean, it could be around 0, which isn't too cold. It could be, I mean, it could be like -20 if we're really unlucky. Doubt it'll be as cold as -20. That's fairly rare where I'm from near Oslo. Oh, hang on, I've just dropped a stitch on the edge here. Let me just pick that one up quickly. I'm glad I noticed that before I went any further. So yeah, my parents live near Oslo, and it doesn't get -20 there very often, but we have had -20 before when we've been there at Christmas, and end of January tends to be colder than Christmas, but I don't think they've had any really cold weather this year. I don't think so. I'm hoping it'll be cold enough to get a bit of snow, but we'll see. But anyway, if it is cold, I don't really like wearing a hat. I tend to find hats get too hot, but my ears and my forehead gets cold, so that's why I thought I would knit this headband. And then it's also for my to have a fairly easy pattern to use for my workshops. So I've got very much to do. I've been working on a deadline lately, so I've not been working that much on this after I started it last week. So let's get to today's topic, which is size inclusivity, and that's been a really hot topic in the knitting world. Inclusivity as a whole has been a hot topic in the knitting world over the last few years. It kind of started with racial inclusivity, which is obviously still something I think needs to be worked on. But lately I've been hearing a lot about size inclusivity, so I thought I would chat about that because that's something that I feel like I know more about than race inclusivity. I mean, whether it's, we're talking about race, size, abilities, whatever it is, financial, you know, we'd like to everyone to feel included, nobody to feeling excluded from the knitting community, the online knitting community, or the knitting community generally. So just want to say that to start with, but I'm going to talk specifically about size inclusivity, and I have a few views on that as a knitter who's also plus size, and also as a knitwear designer. And I think as a knitwear designer, I'm going to come straight out and say it, I don't think I've always been that good at being size inclusive in my patterns. And the reason for that is various. So a lot of my, talking from a personal perspective, a lot of my patterns I design for magazines, and when I design for magazines, the magazine usually has a range of sizes that they would like you to include, and also the magazine has a set fee that they pay designers, and I am going to admit that some magazines pay more than others, and the magazines that pay more get a slightly bigger size range for me, because it takes time designing a pattern. It's a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, and magazines don't actually pay that much when you think about the hours of time that goes into designing the pattern and then knitting the pattern. So if I'm paying a sample knitter to do some of the knitting, there isn't a huge amount of money left. So I must admit, how many sizes I include does depend on how much the magazine is paying me. I know that I could try and influence what the magazine requests by saying, you know, I really think you should include X, Y, Z sizes. But I also know that they have a limited budget, and it's a difficult topic basically. So the number of sizes that I include for magazines depends on what they require plus what they're paying me. So say for example they require UK sizes 10 to 24, for example. I do quite often do things like size 10 to 12, 14 to 16, 18 to 20, 22 to 24, because that reduces the number of sizes I have to grade. It also can be difficult because the difference between each size isn't huge, and if you have pattern repeats that take up a certain number of stitches, sometimes your flexibility to grade those sizes, it restricts the flexibility to grade those sizes. Does that make sense? So say I have a 10 stitch pattern repeat in a DK yarn, and the difference between each size is 6 stitches. And I need to go up in increments of 10, so sometimes then I end up combining sizes to fit in the pattern repeat. I am a size 22 to 24 in my wardrobe at the moment. Last week, for example, I wore a top from Next that was a size 20 and quite oversized on me, and I wore a top from Next that was size 24 that looked a similar fit on me. So sizing is a little bit funny, depends on the shop or even within the shop. I don't have that many self-published sweater patterns, and the reason for that is this whole issue of the amount of time it takes to grade more sizes. So the more sizes you add, the more complex the pattern gets and the more time it takes. And also, after I've written a pattern, my tech editor needs to check it, and the more sizes I have, the longer it will take them to check the pattern. It can easily cost in excess of £100 to have a sweater pattern graded with just say 4 or 5 sizes. So if I'm going for 10 sizes or more than that, that will take a lot longer. Also, the other thing is, so there is a financial issue to that when it comes to how many sizes a designer chooses to include. Also, most designers don't sell a huge amount of patterns. Very few designers make money from designing patterns. I make more money from teaching workshops. Now, I've increased the amount of designing I've done since the start of the pandemic, because obviously in 2020 all my workshops got cancelled, so I wasn't teaching anymore for a while. 2020 and 2021 I did very few workshops, so I tried to increase the amount of designing I did for magazines and also self-published patterns. And then last year, when my workshops got back to normal, I was teaching more kind of my normal amount of workshops. Plus I was keeping up with all those designs for magazines that I'd built up again. I did a lot less self-published patterns last year just because of time. There's only so much I can fit into a day. So when I first started designing, I chose to design for magazines because when you're unknown, nobody buys your patterns, and I thought designing for magazines was a good way of getting known. And then I started teaching and I got very busy, so then I cut down on my magazine designs to focus more on teaching and self-publishing patterns, and then I increased my magazine designs again at the start of the pandemic. And now I'm very keen to keep up with that, because I am worried, what if my workshops level drops again? It's all, when you're self-employed, I think it's all about balancing income streams, really. I'm not a trained designer, so I've not been trained in grading patterns. Everything I know I've learned on my own. And when I started designing, there was very few online resources. I tried to find like charts of measurements for different sizes, and the ones that a lot of magazines, even here in the UK, used was an American chart from, I can't remember what it's called now. I can't remember what it's called, which had like a list of sizes and measurements for each size and different measurements of different body parts and things. And I used that for a long time, and it was difficult to find resources for larger sizes, really. I think that's improving a lot. Kim McBrien Evans, hang on, I'm just looking because I've got the chart hanging behind my camera on the notice board, and she's called Kim McBrien Evans. She lives in Canada or US? Either Canada or the US, I'm not 100% sure. And she did, I think it was quite a long-term project where she kind of did like a list of measurements. I think she asked people to contribute measurements to like a survey she did. I think that's how she did it, I seem to remember. And she's produced a very comprehensive chart with different sizes, going up to quite larger sizes. I'm not sure how far it goes up. I'm trying to look behind me, but I don't know. It's double-sided, so I don't know how far that goes up. But it's quite a comprehensive chart, and I'll see if I can find it and link it below. So I have used that recently to kind of update my spreadsheets. So I have spreadsheets set up that will help me grade the standard sizes I need to grade. And I use Kim's spreadsheet last year to kind of upgrade my size charts a bit, because I felt like, especially towards the larger end, I wasn't sure how accurate it was. But there are complexities about designing for larger sizes, I think. So I think that you don't necessarily get in smaller sizes, and that is where larger bodies hold their fat stores, if you like. So you get some larger people with quite big busts, some with quite big tummies, some with very big arms, some with smaller arms. And I guess you could say that's the same thing for smaller bodies, but I think there is more, because larger bodies have more fat stores, if you like. I hope nobody will be upset by the terms I use, but I'm trying to use terms just as a descriptive term, and I know some of us don't like being called fat, some of us don't mind it. I know I'm fat and I don't mind being called fat. But you know, you can line up, say, 5 women who are all the same size, and they will be different shape, and I think that's the same whatever size you are. But I think the differences between where you hold your fat stores vary probably more when you're a larger size, I think. But you are, I know shops like to use, or fashion industry like to use terms like pear shape, apple shape. I think the differences are bigger when you are a larger size. Will want options for customizing, and a lot of people want those options to be included in the pattern. So I've seen a designer recently who said that she includes several different sleeve options in her pattern, like different sizing options for sleeves. I haven't looked at her patterns in detail, but it looks to me like they're possibly mostly dropped shoulder, and they are fairly fitted, from what I can just work out from looking at her designs on social media. And adjusting the sleeve sizes for something that's drop shoulder is relatively easy. Adjusting it for something that is have set-in sleeves is a bit more difficult. So that is another question, is how many options do you add on customization? I think a lot of designers lack confidence in grading larger sizes. I know I certainly do, even though I am a larger size myself. I haven't knitted a huge number of garments for myself since I have been this size. I have been bigger than this as well in the last 15 years since I started designing knitting patterns. But I don't knit garments myself a lot, mainly because of time and my design schedule and things. I think one of the main reasons why designers don't necessarily include size inclusive patterns are time, knowledge, and money. Having said that, I must admit, I'm going to be quite honest here. I do not make a lot of money from my self-published designs. My pattern sales have fallen in the last few years. I had a couple of years which I did quite well, and then they started to fall before the pandemic. And I think there's just so much choice. I don't have a huge social media following, so although I'm fairly well known because I design for a lot of magazines and stuff here in the UK, I don't have this huge social media following as some designers. So there are designers who have several 100,000 followers on social media, and I know that doesn't necessarily always, the number of followers on social media doesn't necessarily relate to sales, but it is an indication, I think, for most people. So if you have 5,000 followers, 50,000 followers, 500,000 followers on Instagram, for example, that probably will also be an indication as to how many patterns you're likely to sell. So there are some really big names, so I'm not going to name any, who are regularly being criticized for not being very size inclusive. And I think those people have less of an excuse because they make more money per pattern they sell, so they can probably afford to pay more for tech editing and also pay someone to grade their patterns if they can't do the larger sizes. They don't have the confidence or the knowledge or the time to do the larger sizes. But I would say for most knitting designers, that's not an option. Most knitting designers outsource as little as possible, just because the more you outsource, the less money you make. I am planning to design some more sweater patterns this year. Mainly with sweater patterns, I tend to knit something that I want to knit for myself, and then I just publish the pattern for it, basically. So I wouldn't design a sweater pattern, self-publish a sweater pattern, unless I actually wanted to knit it for myself, just because I don't know how many patterns I will sell. So if it's something I want to knit for myself, then I tend to view the number of patterns I sell as a bonus, because I've knitted a garment for myself anyway. So that's kind of how I tend to view it. But I do want to knit some more garments for myself this year. My goal is 4, 1 per quarter. So we'll see. And I will, when I work on those patterns, I will work to make sure those patterns have a larger range of sizes. Now, I focus a lot on the larger, offering sizes up to a larger size, but I also know that there are people who are smaller size. So a lot of patterns tend to start at size 10, UK size 10 that is, and some people are size 8 or size 6. And I know that I've had very small women say to me, I wish you would do this in a smaller size, or the smaller size is too big for me. And I know that is a problem as well. And I think a lot of the talk in the size inclusive space tends to come from larger women, and it tends to focus on the larger range of the spectrum rather than the smaller range. But I think it is a problem on the smaller side as well. It also isn't just garments, it also applies to accessories. So I have a lot of shawl patterns. Now, when I first started designing shawls, one skein stocking shawls were very, very popular. So I did loads of those, and then as the years went by, larger shawls became more popular. So I started designing larger shawls, and I designed small shawls, and then had larger women complain that they are too small for them. And I've designed larger shawls, and then had smaller women complain that their shawls are too big for them. Most of my shawls come in one size, but I have so many shawls that, I have triangular shawls that are small sizes and large sizes. And so I tend to kind of think with things like shawls that if you want a smaller shawl, just go for a different pattern, because I have such a huge range of shawls. Because I don't tend to do shawls in more than one size. Some shawls are fairly easy to customize, but obviously that requires a certain amount of skill. And yes, maybe I should think about offering shawls in more than one size, but I haven't so far. But it's certainly something to think about for the future. But also things like cam warmers, hats, socks, things like that, gloves, mittens, they certainly need to be appropriate size. And I haven't designed socks for a long time. I have some sock patterns, and they come in 2 or 3 sizes, I think. So they probably don't cater for really, really tiny feet and very, very large feet. Now, when I talk about the size of feet, I'm not talking about the length, I'm talking about the circumference, because all my sock patterns, you can adjust the length. Cost of yarn is also an important topic, I think, when it comes to the size inclusive discussion. If I was going to knit a sweater for myself in hand-dyed yarn, especially if it was DK yarn like this, then I would not be able to afford it, because hand-dyed yarn especially is expensive, and DK yarn, I would need more skeins to knit a sweater for myself, so that would probably be out of my price range. I could do 4-ply yarn, because 4-ply yarn, one skein goes further than DK yarns. It is definitely better value to knit garments in thinner yarn. So you might think that whether you buy 4-ply yarn or DK yarn doesn't make any difference. If you buy 4-ply yarn, you just knit further, but you do get a lot more yarn for your money. And a sweater using 4-ply yarn uses fewer skeins than the same size using DK yarn. So that is one thing that's important to remember as well. So if you find that yarn for your size is expensive, then maybe look at thinner yarns or patterns with thinner yarns, because it does work out cheaper, because you get so many more meters per 100 grams. So for example, I would never knit a sweater for myself in chunky yarn, because that would just cost too much money. Also, I don't really like chunky yarn. Now, I do apologize for the lighting today. It is sunny outside and the sun is it's nearly lunchtime, I think. Yes, it's 1 o'clock, so the sun is just coming around this side of the house and it's shining straight in here. So I've closed the curtains, and then we keep, when the sun comes out, it goes bright on now. It's gone a bit darker again, so I do apologize for the lighting today. Okay, so a bit of a ramble there about size inclusivity and my thoughts on it. I'm all for size inclusivity. I'm all for anything that includes everyone in my hobby and my business. But I do think that we also have to use a bit of grace. So every time I hear somebody criticizing a designer for not being size inclusive, I'm thinking, oh, they're talking about me, because most people don't want to name and shame. So they'll just say, oh, I've seen this sweater pattern, it's not very size inclusive. And I'm like, oh, I hope it's not me they're criticizing. I think if you contact somebody and they say, no, sorry, I can't be bothered to do it, to include larger sizes, then that's perhaps that's not good. I do think if you contact somebody about their sizing, about the range of their pattern sizes, it is up to them, and they obviously do have the right to say no. Hang on, let me just, I think I've done those right. How many? I need to do 2 more rows. It's up to people to decide what range they want to design for. I saw a comment recently about a very, very popular designer with a huge following, who herself is very, very, very tiny, and she said, I design for small people, and that's what I specialize in. And there are probably designers who do the other thing, specialize in designing for larger bodies, and that's fine. But I guess the thing is, there's nothing, as a designer, you decide who you want to design for. If you decide you only want to design for smaller sizes, that's fine. If you only want to design for larger sizes, that's fine. But then be upfront about that and the reasons for that. And as consumers, we can then choose where to spend our money. I think if you pretend to be size inclusive, but your size inclusiveness only goes up to, say, UK size 20, that's not really very inclusive. So there are a lot of topics on this. This may be slightly rambling. I'm just giving you my thoughts as a plus size person and as a knitting designer. Let me know what you think. How important is size inclusivity to you? How important does it guide you in who you buy from? Do you only buy from designers who are size inclusive, or do you just, if you see a pattern and they have it in your size is included in the pattern, you'll buy it? Or if you are a straight size person and you see a pattern that you like, but it doesn't go above, say, a size 20 or something like that, it's not inclusive in larger sizes, do you not buy it? Or do you think, well, it fits me, so I'll buy it? Let me know what you think. This is a very difficult topic, I think. I do think my experience is that possibly larger people tend to knit fewer garments for themselves, and I don't know whether that is because of the lack of patterns, or the cost of the yarn, or the amount of time it takes. Because I know roughly how long it'll take me to knit something in a size 10. I've knitted hundreds of garments in a size 10 in the last 15 years because I design that all the time for magazines. So I know roughly how long that will take me. I am less confident in how long it will take me to knit a sweater for myself, because I rarely knit for myself, and I'm like twice that size. Because magazines very rarely want the larger size. I did do one last year that was for Simply Knitting magazine. They wanted the larger size, and it happened to be the size that fits me. So I was very, very pleased. I didn't knit it, my sample knitted it, but I was very pleased because that was the only sweater that I designed last year that actually fits me. And they did pay slightly more for it, I think. I'm pretty sure they paid. That particular magazine pays slightly more than some of the other magazines anyway. So anyway, I'll stop rambling. Let me know what you think. What, if you're a larger person, what makes you decide whether or not to knit a sweater? Do you knit sweaters for yourself if you're a larger size, or do you only knit accessories? Let me know what you think. And let me show you, let me just finish this row because I'm partway through a row and it's not a good idea to stop in the middle of a row. And then I will show you how far I have got. So I didn't knit too much, but I got a little bit done. So yeah, that's how much I knitted. I've got to do one more row and then I have 12, so I've got 13 rows left. But obviously this is brioche, so I'm knitting each row twice. And then I will show you, I'm hoping to finish this before I can record my next podcast episode, which will be episode 65, just checking on my computer, episode 65, and you may see the finished headband in episode 65, which may actually be out before this video is out. So if you watch this video and you want to see what the headband looked like, just go and check out episode 65 of the Confessions of a Yarn Addict podcast. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry this was slightly rambling, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on this issue and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Please like this. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and please subscribe. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.